G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you are all doing well out there. Absolutely monstrous week. It's getting ridiculous. We're not even near, what are we? We're over 1 year away from the halving. We are that far away from bull market, FOMO and craziness. It's insane how much is happening already. Bitcoin basically, no one, governments, non-government organizations, unelected officials, celebrities, traditional finance folks and players, they can't stop talking about Bitcoin. It's absurd. And all you're getting is FUD. And it is a beautiful thing. You've got to embrace the FUD. That is the key to having success in Bitcoin. Now, one of the biggest pieces that came out this week was an article from the New York Times. It was just absolute lies upon lies upon lies. And there's a real great number of refuted articles and podcasts sort of debunking the whole thing. It just has no idea. And, you want to pretend like the journalist at the New York Times just, didn't research correctly. But realistically, if this is being published by the New York Times, you've got to consider that this is a funded attack on Bitcoin because it's so unfounded and so ridiculously misrepresenting of Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining that, you have to have a low level of understanding of Bitcoin to know that this is absolute horseshit. And I've got this link here, which I'm going to put below if you want to read it in detail. It's from the btcpolicy.org, and they basically put this beautiful piece out. It's about 7 minutes of reading, and it just refutes everything that they say. Even better than this, well, perhaps if you're more into listening, on the Stefan Livera podcast, he has a great conversation with Pierre Rochard, who is the main sort of player in all of this, or one of the people representing the Bitcoin space. Now, what Pierre also did was excellent, and he's the trolling king. There's no doubt about that. If you don't know Pierre, you've got to research him. I've spoken about this before. He is one half of the Nakamoto Institute with Michael Goldstein, which is Bitstein on Twitter. Their stuff is fantastic. It's such a great website. You have to spend some time there. It is in the link below. The BTC starter that is linked below. A lot of the work is in there. Roll around the interwebs of the Bitcoin space and you'll really learn a whole lot. But Pierre is fantastic. He is steadfast. He's very intelligent and he questions everything with a high degree. So he put together this little response to the Bitcoin mining produces CO2 conundrum that the New York Times are sort of pushing around the internet. And look, it's been a crazy week because we've had politicians, we've had celebrities, we've had, Hillary Clinton's come out saying it's a threat against the currencies. Everyone's saying it's not worth anything, but suddenly it's a giant threat. So I think people know a lot more than they're letting on, that this thing is revolutionary and vital to be holding if you want to protect your future and your family's legacy. But let's hear from Pierre. This is absolute gold. Well done, Pierre. And you've got to love him.
We're here out in Rockdale, Texas. We've got lots of plants here. These plants are consuming CO2 and emitting oxygen, which is fantastic. When we measure CO2 out here, we're in the green. There are very low levels of CO2, 455 parts per million of CO2. Just fantastic reading. Rockdale has some of the freshest air I've ever breathed. So this is a great way to establish a baseline. We're going to go inside the mining facility and we're going to see how much is this number going to go up. If the number does not go up, then the mining rigs are not emitting any CO2. If the number goes down, that would be interesting as well. So let's find out. This is where the science happens. This is the largest Bitcoin mining facility in the United States. Outside, we were at 455 parts per million of CO2. Inside, we're at 428 parts per million of CO2. So CO2 levels actually decreased a little bit by entering this Bitcoin mining facility. That might just be a measurement error. But in any case, so far our going thesis is that Bitcoin mining does not emit any CO2 at all. But let's go to an air-cooled building and see if that's the case there as well. We're on the air intake side of this air-cooled mining facility. We're still out here in Rockdale at Riot's world-leading mining facility. We're at 452 CO2 parts per million. Still in the green. This is good. This is good. We're going to see in the hot aisle where the exhaust is coming out of how much CO2 is coming out of the Bitcoin mining rigs. Let's find out. All right, we're gonna put the meter just right behind a fan so that we're blowing all of the air onto the meter, and we're gonna see what it's gonna change here in terms of measurements. We're still at 452 parts per million. This result makes me think that there might not be any CO2 coming out of the Bitcoin mining rig. I think the science is conclusive. The data shows Bitcoin mining does not emit any CO2.
So on the flip side, and look, Warren was rolled out for 2 pieces this week, and a couple of big points came up. There was a big splash about an incident in Taiwan, which was almost like a Freudian slip from old Wazza. He's getting old, so this stuff's going to happen. It's impossible. You might be a Warren Buffett worshipper, and that's fine. But if you are in denial that a 94-year-old has the cognitive, traction and speed that a 35-year-old has, I can't help you. You've lost the plot. Any judgment call that a 94-year-old is making on behalf of others should be scrutinized incredibly heavily, in my opinion. This old is better thing is just, it's insane. There is a point where you can go well until, but you can still be sharp, but you're not as sharp at 94. Like, come on, think about it, use your brain. But Warren continues to refute Bitcoin. He continues to miss a 15-year opportunity. He continues to double down on his moronic decision-making about not investing. Yet what's going to happen in the end is his companies that he invests in are all going to have Bitcoin invested somewhere. And this is already starting to happen. He's heavily invested in a Brazilian startup, like a money transmitter. They've got 1% on the balance sheet already of Bitcoin. So Warren, he can hate it as much as he wants. It's not going to go away. And the conflation between cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is becoming sickening. It's like a head disease. I don't know what else to say, but lumping the two together is a fool's errand.
The idea of this legalized gambling, and it's spreading in the States, and everything that's happening right now, you think that's changing the games? You think there are situations where the spread's not going to be made, and it's because somebody is doing it, they've been paid off?
Well, I think everybody in the country spent all their time gambling, flipping coins against each other. Somebody would win 20 times in a row, every, million times or something like that. You have 330 million people doing it. You've got 330 people that have called the coin flip correct or something. I mean, the urge to participate in something where it looks like easy money it's a human instinct which has been unleashed. It was always there. I mean, when my dad was in Congress in the House office building, I could go to the elevator and yell "Sammy," and a guy would come up to take numbers bets, which were illegal, on the 4th floor of the House office building. It's people love the idea of getting rich quick. I don't blame them, but I've always wanted to get rich slow, and I have a lot of fun along the way. But I'm not immune to it. I've bet on football games. I made one wager at the sports book in Nevada, and I was out there with a couple of friends, and I went up and bet on Nebraska against it. And about 10 people got up behind me and said, "I'll have what he's having." It's got to make Ryan the movie. And so they had a very unbalanced book when they got through that day, and I got 500. My 550, and I made a profit of 500 on it, and I had somebody else cash the tickets. So it's so human, and once unleashed, you can't put it back in the bottle. And something like Bitcoin, it is something. It's a gambling token, and it doesn't have any intrinsic value. And Larry Summers was on a week ago and said it doesn't have any value. I mean, it doesn't have any value, but that doesn't stop people from wanting to play a roulette wheel and think that if there's 37, 1 0 and or 00, and it doesn't make any difference. Yeah, it makes a difference, and it's just a question how fast it eats up your money if you spend the rest of your life spinning around roulette wheel. But they feature the winners, and people get excited about it, and that's why the slot machines make a lot of noise when they're paying out. I don't know how to turn back the clock on that.
Now, even more interesting this week is the actual world CBDC that's coming out from the IMF. And now I've been crapping on about the CBDCs for yonks. You guys all think I'm a nut job and that they're never coming. They are coming thick and fast. They're going to be in your little phone before you know it. And, you're not going to get to have voted on this. It's going to be absolute tyranny and dystopia, whether you want to believe that or not. There is no benevolent decision maker in these. Whether they push that across and you believe them is another story. But the World Monetary Unit, also known as Unicorn, is an international central bank digital currency that has been designed to work in conjunction with all existing national currencies. This should set off alarm bells for us all. Now, this piece here, you can pause and read it. This is from Zero Hedge, and there is a lot of fear about the world CBDCs. It is not the place we want to go. But let me tell you, the marketing push is going to happen strong. The narrative is going to be very, very strong, and it's going to take all of your brain power to make sure you verify the information and make sure that you invest accordingly and, stand up against these types of things, because they don't work out in the long run. They may seem rosy at the start, but they're not in the long run. And think about your next generation, or 25 years down the line. Forget about today. Forget about how you operate today. It's not about that. So here's some of their marketing. Let's listen to this. This is not good.
Communicating or sending large amounts of data around the world is cheap and easy. But sending money to another country is usually expensive and slow. The way money travels across the globe relies on many intermediaries, increasing the complexity, time, and cost of transactions. One of the main difficulties is that most payment systems are designed for domestic payments, not for international payments, and often do not communicate with similar systems in another country. The reasons for this vary, for example, due to differences in legislation and technical systems, and different working hours in various countries. The development of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and the underlying technologies that can be used could offer a solution. CBDCs used between consumers and merchants are known as retail CBDCs. Retail CBDCs could offer advantages such as faster transactions, more competition in payments, lower risks, and safety in the form of central bank money. Countries around the world are researching and experimenting with retail CBDCs, with many pilots underway. The central banks of Israel, Norway and Sweden have joined forces with the BIS Innovation Hub Nordic Centre in Project Icebreaker, which aims to explore how retail CBDC systems can be linked together to enable efficient international payments. Project Icebreaker is exploring a specific model linking national retail CBDC systems together. The Icebreaker Hub routes payments and allows national CBDC systems to talk to each other, despite being based on different technologies. In this project, different distributed ledger technologies used by each country for their proof-of-concept CBDC systems were connected to the Icebreaker Hub. Let's see how this works. Say Alice in Stockholm wants to send money to Noah in Tel Aviv to pay for a camera she bought online. When she enters Noah's payment address and the amount into her mobile app, the Icebreaker Hub helps her find the best available exchange rate. This is calculated from the rates foreign exchange providers submit to the Icebreaker Hub. Alice's payment is then broken down into two payments, one in Swedish e-krona to a foreign exchange provider in Sweden, and another in Israeli digital shekels from the foreign exchange provider in Israel to Noah. These two payments are coordinated using a form of digital escrow known as a hash time-locked contract, HTLC. The payment from Alice to the foreign exchange provider will only be released if the foreign exchange provider has paid Noah. If no foreign exchange provider can exchange Swedish e-krona for Israeli digital shekels, the Icebreaker Hub will find a bridge currency, for example Norwegian krona, that can be exchanged for both Swedish e-krona and Israeli digital shekels, and will use that to bridge the gap. Swedish e-krona are exchanged for Norwegian krona, which is in turn exchanged for Israeli digital shekels. The hub will always choose the payment path that is cheapest for the payer. The benefits of the model demonstrated in the project are: it enables cross-border interoperability, allowing systems with different technologies to talk to each other in a standardized way. It reduces settlement and counterparty risk by the use of coordinated payments in central bank money. It allows increased competition and choice for consumers by decoupling payers from specific foreign exchange providers, as well as through the use of bridge currencies. It helps reduce costs. It helps achieve increased cross-border reach. It is scalable, easily connecting the systems of many countries. It is fast. Transactions take just seconds to complete. And CBDC does not need to leave a national CBDC system. Project Icebreaker has demonstrated that central banks can implement different technologies for their national CBDC systems that meet their needs and enable cross-border payments with minimal requirements. Further areas of work are still necessary, but the lessons so far can guide central banks when designing their national retail CBDC systems. Project Icebreaker, breaking new paths for cross-border payments.
And whilst there is an unusual large volume of FUD against Bitcoin, there are some shining lights. We've got Natalie Brunel, who's always pushing out good stuff into the mainstream media, and Pomp. Pomp's had his ups and downs, and like all investing, he's made some errors, but he continues to push the Bitcoin narrative, and I think he believes in it wholly and solely. This is a great piece from Pomp. This is the messaging that people need to hear out there. They need to hear that this thing is real, and that this thing is something to believe in and put your hard-earned money in.
Bitcoin specifically is a decentralized asset with a programmatic monetary policy. It is backed by the strongest computing network in the world. And if there is one thing in the world that I will bet my life on, it is the fact that Bitcoin's monetary policy will continue to execute exactly as designed. Whoa. No one in the legacy financial system can even tell me what the Federal Reserve's monetary policy is going to be a month or a couple of weeks from now. It's impossible to plan. The average American cannot plan their life. The average entrepreneur cannot plan their business because they don't know if the cost of capital is going to be 0% or 5%. They don't know if we're going to be in a quantitative tightening or quantitative easing. But Bitcoiners know the monetary policy till the day they die. It is written in code, audited by anyone in the world. And as long as that code continues to execute, that monetary policy will not change. And that is the beauty, is that you can trust an algorithm just as you do in the rest of your life. You trust Google to give you answers rather than ask your friend. You trust Spotify to give you music recommendations rather than ask a friend. You trust Google Maps to give you directions rather than ask a friend. And eventually, I think you're going to trust an algorithm with your monetary policy more than you're going to trust any other human in the world.
One of the biggest mistakes that people make around the world, particularly in America, in my opinion, and I apologize to all of the Americans who might be listening, but Bitcoin is an asymmetric opportunity, in part because it is available to every human on the planet. Now, whether it's down in US dollar terms or not is sort of irrelevant because, for example, look at this chart. This is a chart of Argentina. They're up 104%, I think, their inflation in the last year or the last month or something. They're in a very bad spot. Look at the Bitcoin chart here. It's at all-time highs. There's a lot of countries around the world where Bitcoin is at all-time highs. It's nowhere near it's like 60% off all-time highs currently, maybe 60, 55, 60, something like that. The thing is saving lives. The thing is saving people's life around the world already. So when you hear stupid moron celebrities or tradfi people or mainstream media poo-poo Bitcoin because it doesn't fit their narrative, just think about it outside of our little bubble that we all live in the Western world. This thing is a life-saving technology to many, many countries and many, many individuals around the world. And that is why it continues to grow fundamentally every day, every week, every month. That's it. That is it. And you know what? We want the Western elites or the Western folks to continue to poo-poo it as much as possible because Bitcoin wouldn't win unless it was ground up. And what we're getting right now is ground up adoption, and it's just a beautiful thing to watch. So from some analysts and some sort of on-chain folks out there, there's been a little bit of, analysis done regarding Bitcoin rises and the halvings and the intersection of monetary, easiness. It's, look, I don't know. Only time is going to tell if the halving really and truly does have such a great impact. I think it does personally because it is halving the amount of available supply to be purchased. So thus thrusting the price up. But what a lot of data is showing, and this is from TechDev, this is showing that the times when monetary, like M2 internationally is going up, Bitcoin price pumps as well. And then when it's in contraction, Bitcoin is contracting. It's hard to believe that these things have lined up perfectly for 15 years or 14 years, but here we are. And again, time is only going to be the true arbiter in this instance. What we're going to have coming up is, I know it feels good because we're up 100% in Bitcoin this year, but we're going to come into a recession at some stage, perhaps later in 2023, perhaps in 2024. And I don't really know. Look, we might avoid recession. Maybe. But either way, there is going to be some headwinds for Bitcoin coming up. And this cycle may be able to prove out whether it is correlated to money printing, because there will be money printing at the end of this, or whether it is partly a function of the halving process and its 4-year cycle. So I think it's a cycle where you don't really want to try to be cute and play little swing trades. I think it's going to be a volatile, rough and fast-moving cycle. And I'm just counting down the days to the halving now to try to get a feel on how this is all going to go. We want to see what happens with the altcoins, and whether that's going to have an impact from a regulatory standpoint on what happens with Bitcoin. But it's certainly an interesting thing to watch, and we'll only know in time, but we'll keep an eye on it. This goes more into global liquidity here, and the Rational Root has produced this chart. He refreshes it a fair amount of the time, which is great. But global liquidity, you can see, has actually risen fairly in line with Bitcoin's move up this year. And, you know, again, I must stress this. It's not all about the US. It's really not. It's a global phenomenon. And you're very lucky to have the access to get in at these low numbers. This is still a low number. When you look at the opportunity over the next few years, you know, 30K US is absurdly low. But very hard to convince people of that. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on this. As we go through this, you know, there's a lot of rocking and rolling with the currencies and the this, and will the BRICS currency come over the top of the US dollar? Will the yuan do something over the US dollar? No one knows. No one knows. But there's going to be a lot of currency wars happening realistically behind the scenes at the minute. And, you know, coming into next year, which is an election year, it's all just going to be crazy. So, or is this year an election year? No. Next year is the election year. Excuse me. So I'm looking for increased liquidity in the globalized money printing haven that we live in. So this is a long thread that Preston Pish has put out and just keeps updating. Basically, he's basing a lot of this on an asset class variance, and he's putting it against the halving. So this is the measurement of growth since the last halving, which was in May 2020. Now you can see here on the chart very easily the Bitcoin price. It's, you know, much more volatile than gold, the NASDAQ, and the S&P. But look at the change, 238% up since that day, and we've had an absolute monster bear market. We've had a bear market for a year, went down 76%, and we're still 238% up from the last halving. So what does that tell you comparatively to these other assets? We had the most liquidity ever provided for us in 2020. The QQQ is only up 47%, S&P is up 44%, gold's only up 17%. Now, what do you think, where do you honestly think the liquidity is going to end up going? It's going to go to the best. It's going to go to the best and hardest form of money over time. Slowly, more and more people work this out. It's just a natural evolution. And so the question remains, where should you hold your value? Now, you know, I can't believe people question that, but you have the ability. The beauty of Bitcoin is this: you have the ability to hold less money in Bitcoin and a large cash position, and you're basically hedged on everything, and you get all the upside of Bitcoin. You cover your risk against something in Bitcoin because you have cash, and you're going to outperform. So, you know, I say this almost every week. Why would you buy Telstra? Why would you let your super fund manager, who you don't even know probably, you don't even know what assets you're investing in, it's likely. Why would you allow them to invest in Telstra or Optus or these weak Australian stocks? Why? Why would you do that? That's your future. So these funds are dangerous because they're investing in crap. They're not in your best interest, clearly. That goes for the same as the 401ks and the super. And this also goes for ETFs. Exactly the same. They want you to not think about where you're investing so that you don't question anything. And then these horrendous non-profit making companies can survive. And, you know, I hope these rates stay high. I really hope rates stay high. I want them to go higher. But I hope that they stay very high because we need to wash out all of these bad acting companies who have lived in a low rate environment. Low rate life is fake because you can borrow money for free and you don't need to make a profit. It's absurd. But let's see what happens. This chart is going to keep getting updated by Preston. Let's see where we end up in 25. Oh my golly gosh. I know what I want to hold. So here we go, back to the 4-year cycle. Perfect balancing act that is Bitcoin. And, you know, you can see we're pushing towards that halving mark there in 2024. it just works like clockwork. 10-minute blocks, 4-year halvings. I mean, you can trust this. You heard Pomp before. Trust Bitcoin. It is the only thing that we know to be true, literally. So I hope you can allocate some, or hope you can convince someone around you to allocate something to Bitcoin. I thought this was a really interesting piece. Now, Dave Ramsey here, I don't love Dave Ramsey personally. He's a legacy guy. He doesn't have any clue about Bitcoin, and it's very hard for these legacy guys to wrap their head around the possibility that everything they've studied in their life and everything they've worked for has been a lie. So that's cool. But the reason I'm playing this is because this caller that calls in, this is a exact, this is the common person that is the generation that we are in right now. So my generation, the generation below, this is exactly the situation that is happening all around the world. And you've got to be scared of this situation. The generation in discussion here, I think they're maybe 30 or like sub 30 or around somewhere between 40 and 20. They've been pushed into certain areas. They've been pushed to get a offensive degree. They've been pushed to buy a stupid overpriced house. They've been pushed by people to like live a certain way, so they have a huge credit card debt. These are the old adages of the boomers. You just can tell them to go fuck themselves. You need to change your mindset. Stop living in the past, start living in the future. The only way you're going to survive in this new paradigm, honestly, is if you allocate a percentage of your hard-earned wealth and working income into Bitcoin, because there's no other asymmetric bet. You think you're going to buy a house and get onto the property ladder and compete against boomers that are going to just keep pushing the price up? Legislation is stating that they're going to win. So you need to come up with a strategy that is going to give you the best chance in the shortest possible time. So let's listen to this. This is shocking, quite frankly. And this is the situation that we all fear to get in. So don't use leverage or debt.
We have probably just under $1 million in debt, and we want to know how to get debt-free without filing bankruptcy.
Okay, how much of that is a mortgage?
The mortgage, about $210,000.
So you have $600,000 in what?
$335,000 is about in student loans. We both have advanced degrees, and then the rest is really credit cards and personal loans.
So you have $300,000 of credit cards and personal loans?
We have about $335,000 student loans and about $136,000 in credit cards, $44,000 personal loans, and $35,000 car loans.
Okay. How old are you all?
I'm 29.
Okay. So what in the world?
Yeah.
I mean, are you both on this, or is this just one of you that's completely lost your mind?
Well, I have the majority of the student loans, and he has the majority of the credit cards. My credit card debt is not great.
Okay,
it's
so
about
why does he at 29 years old run up $100,000 in credit card debt?
Well, he's 32, but I think it's one of those things where just making really poor financial decisions, thinking be able to pay it down as you go, and then it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And
okay, so you both have advanced degrees. What are your degrees in?
We do. So I have a degree in both of our advanced degrees. No, he has an MBA, and I have an advanced degree in policy. I work in the government, and we actually both do now at this point, actually.
Okay, so your household income is what?
Our household income is about $230,000.
Okay, all right. Is there recognition on both of your parts how absurd this situation is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there is.
Right.
So I think we're both a bit scared and want to do anything we can to avoid.
Okay, great. Then I'm on your team. I can skip that step. Okay, go ahead.
In the end, it's not just the individuals. It's the entire system. Look at this from the US. This is the public debt versus their revenue. Their revenue is from taxes, which we know, like all governments, they can't control their spending. Look at the black line and look at the divergence from the green line. They are out of control. This is the same as Australia. This is the same as the states in Australia. This is the same as Canada. This is the same as all of the nations. You wait, you should see Japan on this. This is frightening. And so, again, I don't mean to sound like a doomer, but all of this merry-go-round will eventually stop. And that day is approaching us. How soon, I don't know. But you want to be on the lifeboat. And the lifeboat is Bitcoin. So look at this chart again. Pause the video. Concentrate on the chart. Do you think that this is sustainable? Very interesting set of data here from young Dylan Leclerc. He's doing great things in the space. BTC is currently 56% down from its all-time high, but if you are allocating daily starting from the high of 69K, you'd be up 17%. So that is the beauty of Bitcoin. The volatility is a feature. It's not a bug. And all you need to do is allocate daily, weekly, monthly, whatever you decide. You just need to get in the game and sit and watch the growth occur. Know that this is preserving your wealth. It's the only thing that's preserving your wealth against inflation. So, as they decrease the purchasing power of the currencies, they're going to continue to do this constantly. Bitcoin will protect you. Bitcoin will save your hard-earned energy and your future. Got to leave you now with Adam Back. The guy is remarkable, but I know this week's been a little bit down in the dumps. We're still moving beautifully. Bitcoin's over 30K. It feels like it's going backwards, but it's not. And we've just got to ride it out. There's still a long, long way to go. There will be some fantastic buying opportunities between now and the halving. That much I can guarantee you. But listen to Adam Back here. He will soothe your mind. He is a constant stacker. He knows this thing better than anyone. And, you know, we should thank Adam for his contributions to Bitcoin. He's been valuable. But look, share this video with someone that you love or like. Hit the like button. I'll see you next week. Stay well out there. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
I think another thing that people maybe don't see or their intuition says shouldn't be the case, and in this case it's a reasonable assumption. So most new software technologies, protocols, even electronics, cars, all these things, you have a crude first version and it's a footnote in history and it gets replaced by newer and better things every time, right? And so that's people's intuition. And like as a normal trend, that's a good intuition because that happens with a lot of things. But I think it doesn't apply to Bitcoin. And, I also started with that assumption, and I got like deep into pulled into the Bitcoin rabbit hole pretty deep in 2013 in terms of looking at the protocol, spent months and months trying to think about any way to improve the protocol, make it so that it would be easier for people to mine with small amounts of hash rate. You maybe need a kind of minimum today, or to make it lower latency, to make it more private, make it more decentralized. So all kinds of interesting and potentially valuable properties from the point of view of somebody from a distributed systems background. And, I'm fairly inventive at like network and distributed system protocols and applied crypto. So I figured, well, maybe I can improve it in some way, and then I can propose the incremental improvement to developers. And if they think it's cool, maybe they will like work on it. And so, I spent about 4 months trying to improve it in any way at all. And I basically discovered that it's not really improvable. So, you could improve one aspect of it, but typically you'd make 2 or 3 other things worse. And so it's It's actually, I think so. So the experience is not just that, you're arguing that it's magically, these magic numbers are perfect, but that's not the point. But the point is that, because some of them are arbitrary numbers, like 21 versus 41 or 42 million, whatever, right? But that doesn't change the economic effect. But in terms of a network behavior or how it works, I think Bitcoin is kind of a mathematical artifact in a way, right? It's sort of almost discovered rather than invented. And I think if you think about the design space of potential distributed electronic cash systems, it's like a very narrow pocket of design surface that works and everything else is worse. And so maybe that's why it was hard to find, like why people tried for a long time and didn't find a system that could work, and why trying to improve it doesn't really seem to work, because you just get knocked out of this kind of local optima, and there doesn't seem to be any, that seems like to be a global optima too.